I'm trying to write the script for my wrap-up for this month. Can't get shit done around here. Do you have anything you want to say for yourself? And welcome back to my channel. It has been a very interesting couple of weeks, but let's wrap up October. That being, if you sit quietly, you can stay. I did read a lot this month. You'll probably notice a theme. To follow last month, we will start with the least best and work our way up from there. So let's go. In terms of quality, again, not a bad month. I really enjoyed most of what I read, though some things did just kind of fall flat. To start off this month, I read Sabrina Icorino, which is a loosely connected anthology series written by an indigenous Latina. This was a 3-star read, mainly because while the quality of the writing was excellent overall, I preferred some stories over others, and that's usually just how it goes with anthologies. Usually, or a collection of short stories, usually you get, a few that you really like, a few that you don't like. I really enjoyed the first story, though I don't remember the title of it, and one of the later stories called Tommy. In my opinion, those were the best. I think they both set the tone very well for what this collection was like. But that being said, I felt like some just weren't my cup of tea. So overall, 3.0 out of 5. And now here is the first in a long, long, long list of comics and manga. So I read Batman Nosferatu, and I don't know how to describe it. It reads almost like somebody drunkenly explained the basics of Superman and Batman to their eager but only moderately less drunk friend, and then that friend tried to recreate a Batman comic. That's not to say that it's not good. It's actually quite interesting, but I wouldn't say it's very good. It's very experimental. It follows Bruce Wayneson and Dirk Grayson as they compete for Barbara Gordson's love in this really weird, strange world in which the Joker is a Frankenstein-esque amalgamation of dead people parts and machine called the Laughing Man. And Dr. Arkham is Petal's Laughing Man as this fortune-telling machine, but it only predicts death. And in order to have its predictions come true, the Laughing Man is released in order to murder. So yeah, I was really confused. Come to find out that there is apparently a graphic novel called Superman Metropolis, and it's like the prequel to this particular one. I thought this was a one-shot, so it just wouldn't have any backstory. Apparently there's a trilogy. So it's Superman Metropolis, Batman Nosferatu, Wonder Woman the Blue Amazon. I didn't know. So I went in entirely blind. 3.0 out of 5. Very interesting concept. Do I think it was executed well? Not really. Art was fine. I like the reimagining of the characters, and I like the gothic horror setting, but other than that, now this one might be my most controversial for this list. Probably not, who knows. Before I start this off, after writing my script, I decided that I am going to make a video on this topic almost later down the line, because if I keep talking about what I'm about to talk about, this is going to be a 3-hour long video, and this wrap up is going to be long as hell. But I feel like I need to preface this with I love comic books, but I don't love comic books like reading them. I like learning about the history of comic books. So I find learning about the history of Captain America as an anti-fascist symbol in a time where people were very pro-fascist in America is very interesting, and I prefer reading about that when actually reading Captain America comics. But there is one character in which I enjoy both the historical context of that character and the actual continuity in canon, and that is Batman. And it's not for the reasons you think. Even though I'm a psych major, I don't think that Batman is the most psychologically interesting. I don't try to psychoanalyze characters. I just happen to think that I just find his stories more compelling than most. That being said, I did read Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, and this graphic novel has been considered essential reading for all Batman fans. If you don't know much about The Killing Joke, it was originally going to be a one-shot with no lasting impact on greater DC continuity. However, because of the popularity of this graphic novel, it ended up having a much more lasting impact than anyone could have guessed. Barbara Gordon, who at the time of the publication of this graphic novel was Batgirl, is paralyzed during the events of the story, and that later translated into the greater continuity. She becomes Oracle. You know, the impact of this particular comic has been DC world shattering. The basics are: the Joker escapes from jail, injures Barbara, kidnaps and tortures Commissioner Gordon in order to prove a point that the only difference between a sane person and an insane person is one bad day. It clearly doesn't work because that's not how people work. People love to believe that this is the be-all, end-all of like the Joker's psyche backstory and his dynamic with Batman, and while I understand why people think that, I don't agree. I just happen to disagree with that. I just think that there's so many more compelling stories than this, though I do understand the greater appeal of this graphic novel. Was it good? It was okay. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 on account of good moments, nice one-liners, great art, and the fact that it did have an overarching impact on the greater DC continuity. The copy I got, one, didn't have a dust jacket for some reason, and two, had a weird mini short story in the back about how some kid was going to kill Batman, and like how because of that's going to make him a better person. Weird shit. I thought it was more enjoyable than the actual story itself. I thought that was pretty cool. Now on to my 4 stars. So the first one I read, the first one is Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, Volume 1, and I typically don't read manga, but a few of my friends, shout out to Preet and Nana, are a part of the host club, and they have read a few mangas this month. I figured I would make do with what I had, and I joined them in spirit. If you don't know, the host club is a manga club where every month one of the hosts introduces the club to 2 manga, one rather well-known, one a little bit more obscure. I took a page out of their book and I picked 2 manga series that I've been meaning to read, one that's incredibly popular and one that's a bit more out there. I don't know how to describe Sailor Moon other than it's kind of like the great granddaddy of every single other magical girl story ever. If not the great granddaddy, then definitely the most popular and what probably popularized the genre to a greater audience outside of Japan. I never watched the anime before reading this manga. I ended up watching it a few episodes with my partner just to see how well the story was adapted to TV. I remember hearing that the author of this manga wrote it because she was feeling very lonely and she wanted to write characters that she would be friends with, and it really shows in the characterization. I too would like to be friends with these characters. There's a lot of heart to this story, and I can see why it was so popular and is still incredibly popular to this day. My partner was incredibly excited that I decided to read this manga and eventually watch a few episodes of the anime. Though I did think that some of the story elements were a bit vague. Granted, it's marketed towards teenagers, and I'm only 1 volume in, so I can't really make a judgment call on that. If anyone must know, my favorite Sailor Scouts are Sailor Mars and Sailor Jupiter. I just think they have great personalities, and I think that they really shine in their respective like little arcs in the manga. I did notice that the anime had a lot of filler episodes like immediately out the bat. I don't know if that is because perhaps, you know, the first chapter of the manga was incredibly popular and they decided to rush the anime, so it was kind of like one of those situations, or if it's just because they're like, oh, that's a little too quick, we gotta pad out for time. Next, I read Revolutionary Girl Utena, Volume 1, and now some of you might be like, Andi, that's not a particularly obscure manga. However, if you compare Sailor Moon and Utena to each other, tell me which one has a more recognition outside of just anime and manga fans. Like, I can go to one of my friends right now and be like, do you know who this is? And they'd probably be like, that's Sailor Moon. I show them Utena and they'll be like, no idea. I knew a little bit about the story before going in, but honestly, I felt very underprepared. Like, I did not know what the hell was going on. It follows the titular character, Utena, as she tries to figure out the meaning behind this mysterious letters that she's been receiving for the last few years. Ever since a mysterious stranger saved her life when she was young, she's directed to attend a school where she finds more questions than answers. She is compelled to duel this man, not knowing that when she wins, her prize is Andi, the Rose Bride. They get engaged. Everyone refuses to explain the rules to her. I'm intrigued by the premise, and I understand why it's like one of those like cult classics, because it's like very intriguing. I want to know what happens, but I'm very confused. Very utterly confused. Both Revolutionary Utena and Sailor Moon are 4 out of 5. Next is Harrow County, which is a comic book series which tells the story of Emmy, a young girl who is the reincarnation of Hester Beck, a witch. After the town, composed of both humans and human-like creatures created by Hester, tries to kill her, Emmy shows that she is entirely different from her past self. With a help of a few Haints creatures that range from spirits to goblins, she tries to prove her point that she is her own person. Also, there's this character called the Skinless Boy, and genuinely, he is my favorite character. I love him very much. I read all 8 volumes of this series in one day. That is 32 comic books, like, all smashed together. I was in a really bad reading slump for a while, and I figured that an atmospheric, spooky-ish story would help, and it did. I gave this series an overall 4.25 out of 5, although I did find that some individual volumes I rated slightly higher or slightly lower depending on the overall quality of that volume. While it hovered around 4.25 and 4.5, the last one felt a little bit more flat, and I didn't think that the ending was very satisfying, at least in my opinion. Next is The Summer of Everything. My friend Kaitlyn from YAPride actually lent me this book, and I cannot express enough gratitude. This book follows Wes Hudson, a geeky kid who is hopelessly in love with his best friend and is completely clueless about what he wants to do with his life now that he's graduating high school and is entering college. When the bookstore he works at is in danger of shutting down, he and his friends spend their summer trying to save the place. This is a great read. Oh god, it was great and just really uplifted my spirit. I was not feeling very good for a while, and whenever I would read this, I felt a little bit better. This book is one of the best examples of casual queerness I've ever had the pleasure of reading. Characters were very casual about their sexuality or their gender. There's a character, Lucas, who is non-binary, and throughout the story, without explanation, they just use they/them pronouns. They mention that they wear a binder. There's another character who has 2 moms, and they're always mentioned, and oh god. I also really like the idea of speed booking, and I would really like to see that like in real life. Like, I think that would be amazing. I believe that this book is severely underhyped, and it deserves so much more love. There's just so much heart and love, and you can tell that this book comes from a place of love for the community and togetherness. It really shows how much books can just bring us together. I am so excited to read more of what Julian Winters has in store, because this was great. I do really wish that I could have read this over the summer as opposed to, in the middle of October, but 4.5 out of 5. Great. And last but not least, the 5-star. The first is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. This is a retelling of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, though it's from the perspective of Elizabeth. This is a first-person perspective, so we get more of the inner thoughts of Elizabeth as she tries to figure out what is wrong with Victor. I love angst. I love dark themes. I love morally gray characters. This was great. I even liked the ending. Whew. I read this at the beginning of the month, so I don't remember a lot of the plot details, but this was good to read. I liked how it followed the plot beats of Frankenstein very naturally and was able to turn certain things on its head. And I thought that this was so much better than Anti-Darken. I'm very glad I read this. The only complaint that I have is that this plays into this idea that Victor is this brilliant, disturbed mastermind bullshit, but honestly prefers characterization of a weak-willed pussy who never got his doctorate. I think that's great. However, I vastly preferred this version of Elizabeth than the original. And lastly, Lovely War. This book had me in a fucking conniption from start to finish. So this follows 3 characters, Hazel and James. That's his name. 2 British people who fall in love just before James is sent off to the war during World War I. And Aubrey, a black American soldier who is also a musician. Oh, I love the framing device. I love that whenever a god was describing the events, you get to see the different aspects of their godhood within their version of the story. I loved our 3 main characters. I just love the book. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did, and I did. Holy fuck. Wow. I think it was very well researched. I like that the author included a list of books to read if you were more inclined to read more about the actual historical context. Just beautiful. And that is what I read for the month of October. For November, I plan to read Watchmen by Alan Moore. Yeah, I know, we're giving Alan Moore another chance. And then a companion book called Watchmen as Literature. I think that will actually help me understand the historical context of the book, even though it came out in the 80s. And the reason why I say that is because like the political landscape of the time was incredibly different than it is now. And there was a lot less like subversive comics at the time. So this was a game changer when it came out, but not necessarily now when you read it. So I would like to learn a little bit more about that. I will also be reading Mad Love and Other Stories by Paul Dini, which is kind of like a companion to Batman the Animated Series, which tells a little bit more about Harley Quinn's backstory. I love Harley Quinn. I like her start from an animated character to a comic book character. I think that's very interesting. Same thing with Renee Montoya. Those 2 are my favorites. And I like Paul Dini's writing. And also Batman Hush. That one is just another one that's like essential comic book reading if you are a Batman fan. So I figured they had it at my school library. Might as well give it a try. I will also be reading Mouse and Metamaus by Art Spiegelman. This is both the actual graphic novel of Mouse, and along with commentary about the process that Art Spiegelman went through when interviewing his father. Don't know what else I'll read in terms of actual books, but who knows? So, until next time, I hope you have a good week. Keep yourself safe, stay hydrated, and as always, adios mi gente.